The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. My camera is blurry. I don't know why. Is that just me? Hold on. Let me see if I can give it a wipe. Oh. I have something right here. Welcome back. It's Saturday night and I'm wiping my camera. I think it looks better. All right, so I know the first thing you're wondering. What is all this you have on your desk? What is all this over here? Well, let me tell you. Let me tell you something. If you're ever hungry and you live in a first world country and you want the perfect snack, ignore the background noise. I don't know if you can hear that. That's just the barn door. You get some of this Bon Mammon strawberry jam. Get yourself some of these butter crackers. The grapes are not necessary. And then you get yourself some cheese. This is homemade cheddar. It's very good. Normally I prefer, let's see, aged Gouda. Like I'm talking at least 18 months. 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. That might be too much, but really good aged Gouda. Articas, Robusto, right? And it's actually really good if you have some like sopressata salami. You take the cracker, you put some of this jam on it, just a little thin layer. You put the little thin slice of salami on there, and then you put some of that little slice of the Gouda. So good. Well, I don't have any salami or Gouda, but I got some turkey. We did have dinner, but it was like kind of a light dinner. We went out into the woods, like we have a campsite that we built around there in the woods on our property. And we did a little family picnic with some pasta. It was the most random picnic. Carrots, tomatoes, grapes. And so we all get in, we leave the house. Katie's riding Rev, one of the horses. I'm driving the side by side. All the kids are on their respective ATVs, and we all go out there, drive around a bit, then we get to the campsite, and there are just like tons of chanterelles. We found probably like this many chanterelles, like a whole handful, orange and yellow. And then when we were done eating, so we just collected that. So we were like walking around collecting chanterelles. Then we ate a little bit and talked for a bit. And then when we were done, we went back. We drove over to like the pond on the far side of the property. And because Kais wanted to see, we have these oats that are growing. I had dumped a bag of oats because I had bought a bag of corn, or I thought I did, for the deer. But when I got it home, it was a bag of oats. So I just dumped it out because apparently deer will eat oats, but they didn't eat these. They were just there the whole year until now. And then like all these oats started sprouting up by the pond. It was pretty cool. So he likes to check on them and see like, what's the status on them. Anyway, so we went over there, picked up the fishing pole because I leave it 2 rods out there with a tackle box out by the pond. Pick up the rod, first cast, bam. Got a bite, reel it in, pretty nice sized bass. Like for our pond, it's a small pond. And so like a bass like that size is big. It's like the biggest we're going to get probably. and then I let the kids, I let Caius reel it in, and then I let Cindy reel it in because he couldn't get it in. So then we caught that, and then I let the kids take turns casting, and they caught 2 more fish. One I threw back because it was pretty small, but we took those 2 and we gave them to the pigs. Because normally I would have just thrown it back in the past, but I went to like this pond seminar about pond management, and they were saying that you should, when you catch the big fish in your pond, you should take them out because they'll just eat the little fish and never let any fish grow, and like eventually like the population of your fish will just dwindle. So I was like, oh, so even if I'm not going to eat it, I'll just take out the big ones. Sometimes I cook them for the dogs or I'll give them to the pigs. We used to eat them, but we could eat them, but I don't know. It's like all the stuff just draining into the pond. I don't know if it's like actually good or not to do that. But anyways, every once in a while it's pretty cool. You can just fillet them, toss them in some corn flour mixture and fry them up. Not bad. I didn't know you could eat bass. Like growing up, I grew up spending a lot of time at the beach because my grandparents had a beach house. So I spent a lot of time at the beach when I was growing up. And we would go fishing like out on the bay or just in the surf. Like we'd wade out into like the beach surf with like, you have this little belt and it has like a rope. And then you have like a little tackle kit, and we would catch speckled trout in the surf. And then when you catch one, you just string it on. You'd like put this little thing through its gills, this rope, and then you'd tie it or hook it onto your belt. So you just like have a string of fish. So we'd do that. We'd catch redfish every once in a while, like if it was their conditions were right. And I've done some other fishing too, but done fishing on lakes. So, but just growing up, it was mostly saltwater fish. I didn't really fish in fresh water that much. So I didn't know you could actually eat bass. I mean, I guess you can eat any fish unless it's poisonous or something. I don't know. Some are probably not good, but I was kind of surprised. They're not bad. Anyways, so I got my snacks. Just I if you paid attention last night, this little fly got very interested in my snacks. If you were watching last night, we talked about the ironic processing theory. So when I had the thought, I want a snack, instead of suppressing it, I decided to make a snack. Okay, so last night we ended off, I was talking about anti-natalism, and strangely enough, Katie was texting me. I guess she saw me talking about it, but she had ordered this book, and it just came today. The Trouble with Being Born. So total coincidence. Like she was already looking into it, and it's kind of I started reading it. It says, a maverick and iconoclast, he has been called the last worthy disciple of Nietzsche, as well as a brilliant aphorist and stylist. His name is EM Cioran. Cioran, I guess. I'd never heard of him. But I had heard of this book. I just never really looked much into it. So anyway, she bought it. I was reading through it. Some interesting stuff. So maybe we might read a little. It's like they're all kind of like aphoristic, I guess. It's almost like reading. There's a book by Nietzsche that's like that. I don't remember which one it is, but maybe it's Thus Spake Zarathustra. I'm not sure, but it's where it's like little statements. It's not like a book making an argument per se. It's just a bunch of little statements, almost like you're reading like journal entries or something. But I'll just give you a little taste. He says, this is the first one. 3 a.m. I realize this second, then this one, then the next. I draw up the balance sheet for each minute, and why all this? Because I was born. It is a special type of sleeplessness that produces the indictment of birth. And then the next one says, ever since I was born, in quotes. Ever since I was born. That since has a resonance so dreadful to my ears, it becomes unendurable. So I'm getting the feeling this guy didn't appreciate being born. That's what I'm thinking. And I want to read the next one too, because it's actually pretty interesting. There is a kind of knowledge that strips whatever you do of weight and scope. For such knowledge, everything is without basis except itself, pure to the point of abhorring even the notion of an object. It translates that extreme science according to which doing or not doing something comes down to the same thing, and is accomplished by an equally extreme satisfaction, that of being able to rehearse each time the discovery that any gesture performed is not worth defending, that nothing is enhanced by the merest vestige of substance, that, quote, reality falls within the province of lunacy. Such knowledge deserves to be called posthumous. It functions as if the knower were alive and not alive, a being and the memory of a being. Quote, it's already in the past, he says about all he achieves, even as he achieves it, thereby forever destitute of the present. And there is one here he talks about time, which I thought was pretty interesting. Here's the next one. We do not rush toward death. We flee the catastrophe of birth. Survivors struggling to forget it. Fear of death is merely the projection into the future of a fear which dates back to our first moment of life. We are reluctant, of course, to treat birth as a scourge. Has it not been inculcated as the sovereign good? Have we not been told that the worst came at the end, not at the outset of our lives? Yet evil, the real evil, is behind, not ahead of us. What escaped Jesus did not escape Buddha. Quote, if three things did not exist in the world, O disciples, the perfect one would not appear in the world. End quote. And ahead of old age and death, he places the fact of birth, source of every infirmity, every disaster. Some dark stuff, man. There was another one, too, where he talked about time. I thought it was a pretty cool statement, actually. Let's see if I can find it. Where is it? I couldn't have read that far. Damn. No. Where is it? Maybe I skipped past it. I don't see it. It was something like, because he was talking about that point of like when you see the beginning in the end. I didn't read that one. Where is it? I thought it was at the, was it at the beginning of the book? Maybe I read more than I thought I did. I definitely didn't read that far. I thought it was like at the beginning. Oh well, it doesn't really matter. He was talking about I don't see it. It's weird. Oh well. Anyways, interesting stuff. Hey, what's up? I see you in the chat. Hello. Okay, so anti-natalism. So I guess this guy might somehow be associated with that. Let me do a little quick search. EM Cioran. Oops, what the heck? Hold on a second. Just click on the wrong thing. EM Cioran. Emil. Oh, it says EM there. Is this the right guy? Nihilism, seems like it. His works frequently engaged with issues of suffering, decay, and nihilism. He started writing The Passionate Handbook. It was the last book he wrote in Romanian, though not the last to deal with pessimism and misanthropy through lyrical aphorisms. Professing a lack of interest in conventional philosophy in his early youth, he dismissed abstract speculation in favor of personal reflection and passionate lyricism. I invented nothing. I've been the one and only secretary of my own sensations. Aphorisms make up a large portion of his bibliography. Yeah, so this one I was reading, it's composed of the whole thing. It's all aphorisms. Philosophical pessimism characterizes all of his works, which many critics trace back to events of his childhood. In 1935, his mother is reputed to have told him that if she had known he was going to be so unhappy, she would have aborted him. Way to contribute to it. However, his pessimism remains both inexhaustible and in its own particular manner joyful. Yeah, that's the thing. When you read it, there's certain parts of it where it's like, it seems like he's relishing in this pessimism. Man, I wish I could find that one. We can endure any truth, however destructive, provided it replaces everything, provided it affords as much vitality as the hope for which it substitutes. Nothing is better proof of how far humanity has regressed than the impossibility of finding a single nation, a single tribe, among whom birth still provokes mourning and lamentations. Jesus. What misery a sensation is. Ecstasy itself, perhaps, is nothing more. Unmasking, decreating, it is the only task man may take upon himself if he aspires, as everything suggests, to distinguish himself from the Creator. And then one of them, there's just one line, it says, to have committed every crime but that of being a father. Man, there was this one really cool line about time. About being faster than time. Wait. No. Why can't I find it? It's so weird. I long to be free, desperately free. Free as the stillborn are free. Our obsession with birth, by shifting us to a point before our past, robs us of our pleasure in the future, in the present, and even in the past. I liked this one. Rare are the days when, projected into post-history, I failed to witness the gods' hilarity at leaving behind the human episode. What we need is an alternate vision, when that of the Last Judgment no longer satisfies anyone. Oh, that was pretty cool. This one was interesting too. This one's cool. While we are performing an action, we have a goal. Performed, the action has no more reality for us than the goal we were seeking. Because it's in the past, I guess, right? Nothing of much consequence here. No more than a game. But some of us are conscious of this game in the course of the action. Oh, in the course of the action. Okay. We experience the conclusion in the premises, the achieved in the virtual. We undermine seriousness by the very fact that we exist. The vision of non-reality, of universal default, is the product of an everyday sensation and a sudden frisson. Everything is a game. Without such a revelation, the sensation we haul through our lives would not have the characteristic stamp our metaphysical experiences required to be distinguished from their imitations, our discomforts. For every discomfort is only an abortive metaphysical experience. Dude. Oh, maybe it's on this page. I think I have the pages stuck together. Maybe it's on here, the one I was looking for. This one's weird. Lucidity is the only vice which makes us free. Free in a desert. No, it doesn't have that one about time on it. I don't think I read this one yet. Man, where is that one? That's so weird. Like, I remember reading it very clearly. But it had to do with that concept of seeing the completed action in the act of doing it, or in the thought of it, and then sort of not seeing any value in having actually done it in the first place. And he says, he makes this point of like, when you're living in that moment, you're faster than time. It was just an interesting little statement. But I don't see it. Should have underlined it. Extraordinary and null. These two adjectives apply to the sexual act and consequently to everything resulting from it, to life first of all. I react like everyone else, even like those I most despise, but I make up for it by deploring every action I commit, good or bad. Jeez. All is suffering, modernized. The Buddhist expression runs, all is nightmare. Thereby, nirvana, whose mission now is to end a much more widespread torment, is no longer a recourse reserved to the few, but becomes as universal as nightmare itself. What the hell, dude? Crazy. Okay, so I wanted to look at Soft White Underbelly because there was an interview I had watched. It wasn't that one. That one might be good. I don't know. Somebody says anti-natalism is overly optimistic. Having children is wrong. Anti-natalism. But I liked the Soft White Underbelly one. Let's see if I can find the one I had watched. No, it wasn't that. It's Nihilist. It wasn't that one. Huh. Well, we'll just try this one. Let's see what it says.
All right, Amanda. Amanda, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I am originally from Manhasset, Long Island. My parents and I moved from Manhasset, Long Island when I was 3 years old, and so I've primarily grown up in Chicago.
And tell me about your childhood.
Like most childhoods, you know, it had its sadnesses and disappointments, but on whole, I had a very nice childhood, a very decent childhood. My mother was a Jungian psychoanalyst and a professor, and my father was a professional advertiser and an oil painter. So I spent a really significant portion of my childhood running around ad agencies and making lots and lots and lots of art.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
In schooling, you went how far?
So I thought that 8 years ago I had completed my my graduate studies at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago in print media. Lo and behold, I was trying to get a copy of my diploma just very recently, and only to discover that I was short 3 credits. So as of yesterday, actually, I have now completed those 3 credits. So I have now completed my graduate degree, and I hope to go further.
And what do you do for work?
I'm unemployed at the moment. I am a caregiver, so that's kind of a job.
Yeah, that's what you've been doing?
That's what I've been doing, yeah, for a long time now, and a lot of anti-natalist activism.
So tell me what anti-natalism is.
Sure. So anti-natalism, put as simply as I possibly can, is the belief that it is unethical to create new life. Now, there are many different types of antinatalism. There's many different types of antinatalists. There's a lot of different motivations for antinatalism. There's a lot of different reasons why people might find themselves to be some form of antinatalist. Antinatalism can apply to a great many things, and there's huge disagreements among antinatalists about all of those things. So most commonly, it is the belief that it's unethical to create new human lives, but this can also apply to animal lives as well, and it can also apply to creatures that might become sentient at some point, like the emergence of sentient machines. There's a whole form of antinatalism called anti-AI natalism. So if those machines were essentially to gain sentience, that we would see that as unethical, and those were our lives worth preventing.
And is your side of it particularly focused on humans?
I'm what is called a sentiocentric antinatalist or a biocentric or a reverse biocentric antinatalist, which means that I'm for the non-existence of anything that has the possibility of feeling.
Really?
Yes.
So
So I didn't interrupt you, but yeah. So my antinatalism would apply to not just humans, but to animals, to sentient.
Why are they still alive? I don't get that part. It's like, well, I mean, I gotta if I'm not alive, I can't get everybody else to like stop making new people and new life forms and stuff. This is like the craziest mentally fucked mindset. Period. But anyways, I'll continue.
Machines, to anything that
dogs,
has
cats, squirrels, frogs.
the whole kit and caboodle.
They should all go.
They should all go. Yeah.
And the trees? Plants?
Well, the trees are not, they're alive, but they're not sentient.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a possibility, there is sort of
So
the...
you cut off a limb of a tree, it doesn't...
It doesn't make it scream.
Mm-hmm.
So my concern is anything that has the possibility of saying ouch. Now, there is also this sort of specter of evolution, out there. If Jeff Goldblum was right in Jurassic Park, the philosopher didn't say that famous line, life finds a way. If life finds a way and it manages to become sentient, if the trees all of a sudden start winking at us and start screaming, then they would become my concern. But right now...
Why is it that you want animals that feel to be abolished?
Because I believe that one of the greatest products of life is the production of suffering. There's all of this incredible amount of suffering. That's basically one of the biggest things that life produces. Life is... but
on the other hand, there's also suffering sometimes motivates us to accomplish things.
That's absolutely true. So once we're alive, we need suffering, right? Like suffering builds character. Mm-hmm. We need to know when we're in pain. Suffering can have all of this value. But the fact of the matter is, before we exist, we certainly don't need it. We're certainly not in need of any of that suffering. No. Before we exist, there's nobody there. Just like they're not in need of all of that suffering that might have some utility to us while we're alive, they also are not in need of any of the good stuff either. There's all of all the positives, to have a good life. We're not before we exist, we're not in need of any of that. And so to create a new being is to put that potential sentient being at great risk. At risk of a poor quality of life. We do that without consent. Now, I know what you're going to say. It's impossible to get consent of a non-existent being, but that's part of the point. That's the nature of consent. If you can't get consent, then you don't take those risks. You don't impose that harm. So
this was to happen, the planet Earth would be just plants and trees and insects?
Well, I mean, insect sentience is definitely. There's a philosopher by the name of Brian Tomasic who has done a lot of work into the idea of insect sentience, and there's a lot of. I'm not entirely sure where I fall on that, but if they can be proven to experience to have negative experiences, then that's something to be concerned about for sure.
I mean, when you first told me that you were interested in doing an interview, and I heard anti-natalism, I assumed it was just humans, because I could see a strong argument for saying the planet would be better off without humans.
Yes. Well, I mean,
given all the damage we've done.
Considering all the damage we've done, yes. So when we met briefly,
we've done some great things too, of course, but
we have certainly.
It's starting to flip and starting to wonder if we're better off without us.
Well, I mean, I think that there's a truth that it would. I mean, the planet certainly would be better off without us. I am, when we met downstairs and you said those things to me, I was like, okay, so if he is an antinatalist, if Mark, you are an antinatalist, you would be an environmental antinatalist. So that would be sort of a form of conditional antinatalism, whereas maybe you wouldn't necessarily be for extinction of human lives, but definitely maybe a lessening. I don't know.
I haven't really thought it out. I'm not one of those, but but I'm not an antinatalist. But I just see how much pollution certain countries are putting out now. The United States is trying their best to help things, but we have other countries that are making it worse, and that affects everyone else.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so I mean, certainly, I think that any amount that we can alleviate the harm that humans do is excellent. I mean, I think so long as life exists on the planet.
But if trees can't experience suffering, according to what she's saying, and maybe even insects, then why does it matter if if we torture them or if we pollute? It only would matter to those who are here. So instead of looking at how do we stop unnecessary suffering, it's like, no, you should just not exist. But the whole environmentalist, anti-natalist thing doesn't make sense, because if you just eliminated humans, obviously that wouldn't stop animal suffering. But if you just got rid of all sentient life, so there's no more suffering, and you say, well, look, it would make the earth better for like the plants, but there is no better for a plant under that philosophy, because you're saying good and bad and suffering and pleasure only come from sentience. So it'd be like, it's kind of self-contradictory in that sense.
You try to make it as good as possible. You know, antinatalism is not saying, let's just give up and let everything go to absolute hell. Like, I'm not happy at all about climate change or any of these things that are going to cause massive amounts of suffering. They're not going to cause extinction. They're going to cause just massive amounts of suffering and probably, civilization collapse and all of that. I would prefer that human beings decide collectively in a more benevolent fashion to end themselves in a much gentler way, and also to take responsibility for the rest of life on this planet. Now, for us, that means just not procreating. You know, there's no need for any violence. There's no need for anything nasty. You know, can we just collectively decide we're not going to produce more of ourselves? And, what kind of interventionalism then needs to happen for the rest of sentient life? That gets a little bit more complicated.
That's actually pretty crazy if you think about it. Like, you're the highest form of life, like life form. You're the most advanced, highest life form. And you're like, yeah, it's no good. It's no good. Just stop. Just end it. It shouldn't exist. I mean, at the same time, there is some truth in what they're saying. But it's not really... It's really just like kind of seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance. Like, not really seeing any potential that you're actually creating reality. That you've been here a long time. It's like the idea you didn't exist and you were born and now you exist. Because you wouldn't know any different. How would you know? If your memories were wiped, how would you know? But you better hope you're right, because if you're not, when you die, then you're like, oh shit, I was supposed to change everything. And then you have to just keep repeating, forgetting, repeating.
I did want to say just real quickly, though, everything that I'm saying as far as animals, sentient machines, again, I need to make it perfectly clear, not all anti-natalists deal with that spectrum of things at all. I mean, that just happens to be part of my concern. But like I said, a lot of anti-natalists are concerned with anthropocentric anti-natalism that applies to only humans. So it gets pretty complicated as far as where the focus is. And
How long have you followed this line of thought?
Yeah, so I started in 2010. So when I was a kid, I was really obsessed with monsters, still am, love monsters and horror and all that. And I noticed that, there were little whispers of...
It's like, I'm obsessed with monsters, love them. But yeah, anyways, it's I shouldn't exist. Like, it's like, be consistent here. It's like, oh, I take pleasure in things for sure. But also, I think nothing should exist. Like, is it just like an idea that you get passionate about? It gives your life purpose? Is that what this is really about? Because why wouldn't you just kill yourself? You're like, well, no, I can't, because if I did, then I wouldn't be there to spread the good news of anti-natalism and get everyone else to, like, not procreate. Think about it. You're going to die. You're not going to exist anymore. According to, like, this metaphysics, what does it matter? Why would you get excited about it? Just, who cares? It would make much more sense for me, from my perspective, to be a nihilist than to be an anti-natalist. like to become passionate about. It's like I care so much about life forms not suffering that I'm going to convince everybody to not produce anymore. Instead of like solving the problems of suffering, that you could get passionate about that, but instead you're like just passionate about getting people just to not create new life forms. Like, why does it matter? Like, if you're accepting that you didn't exist, you were born, you're going to die, you're no longer going to exist, then if you die and you don't know, let's say, whether life is going to continue or not, and there's going to continue to be new life forms, why would you care? Like, if you take it seriously, right? If you take it seriously, okay, I would rather not exist. Okay. So then imagine how you're going to think when you no longer exist. Are you going to give a fuck whether anyone's suffering or not suffering? Like, you're taking a negative judgment on the suffering, which obviously I don't agree with suffering per se as like a unnecessary condition, but you're blanket saying all of it is bad. Because I mean, when someone says, well, sometimes you have to struggle to learn, like, that's not real suffering. That's just the learning process. Like a child being abused, that's real suffering. A war, a drought, you know, and some of these things we could prevent, right? If not all of them, if we actually cared about each other. If you put all this energy and passion into how do we actually create a system that's best for everybody and eliminate all unnecessary suffering? Like, the good suffering, keep it, right? Like, I don't think we should eliminate suffering by making it so that nobody's allowed to learn anything, because if you learn something, sometimes you have to struggle and that could be perceived as suffering. Like, no, you don't have to eliminate that. You don't have to eliminate working out, you know, because like you want to make stronger muscles, like so you can lift heavier things. Like, you're going to suffer. It's going to be painful. But then maybe you could, I don't know, solve that problem too. But my point is, you don't have to go to that extreme of like all suffering, end it all. And if I can't end it all, there's no point. If you just started with, let's just eliminate unnecessary suffering. But I think part of it is they're like, ironically, I guess, like, well, there's no way I could change the system, so I'm just going to convince everybody not to have kids. As if you could have that effect either. Like, if you can't change the system to be best for everybody, you're not going to convince everybody on the planet to not have kids. So what's the point? But again, going back to my point, my original point is, if you imagine yourself as yourself when you no longer exist, which is impossible to imagine, but let's just play with it for a second, you're not going to care whether anyone's suffering or not suffering. The only reason you care is because you're alive right now. So even though they're saying they shouldn't exist and wouldn't, you know, but their whole purpose of their life is self-contradictory. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm articulating that. When I die and I don't exist, let's say that's what happens, I'm not going to give a fuck whether there's still a reality where people are suffering or not. It's not going to matter, okay, if you consider it from that perspective. So can you not see that you worrying about suffering in the way that you're doing it right now is actually only in the context where you exist? So you're literally participating in the problem. You're creating suffering instead of solving the problem. And you're like, well, we should just not exist. It's like, don't worry, you're not going to exist at some point, according to your logic. This doesn't make sense. Eat some cashews.
Sort of something about life, something about procreation that a lot of these stories were like, seem to be trying to tell me. Like, there seemed to be something very obvious there seemed to be a very obvious critique of procreation in the story of Frankenstein. Like, maybe Dr. Frankenstein should not have created that monster. Like, maybe playing Prometheus wasn't such a great idea. You know, maybe he just created this being with unnecessarily, only to suffer.
Honestly, I don't think that's the lesson of Frankenstein. I don't think the issue was that he created the guy. I think the issue is that he didn't take responsibility for what he created. I think that's the issue. He ran away from it. He rejected it. I don't think it's the problem was he created it. I don't think that's the problem. And again, the same point with these people. The problem isn't life existing. The problem is not taking responsibility for it.
And die for no good reason. And also I was obsessed with vampires, and vampires, by biting each other, they create more vampires. And that seemed to me to be sort of a procreative act. And it seemed to be making sort of a critique against procreation. So those ideas were in my head, for a long time, but nothing.
So I was basically a nerd that read a bunch of fantasy and horror stuff. And there are Christian anti-natalists? No way. Someone who says there's Christian anti-natalist. No way, dude. Christian anti-natalism? Argues against procreation based on Christian principles. But Jesus, well, was Jesus born? I mean, he was born, right? How can you say the risk of hell, the problem of original sin? Since the fall of man, human existence is viewed as inherently compromised. I mean, actually, sorry, I dropped a cashew. I don't know where it went. It went into the cashew dimension. Actually, unless you kind of cling to well, God said, go forth and multiply. Remember that? But didn't he say that before the fall? Pretty sure. Except for that part, you could just say like, hey, Jesus saved us. You can't be perfect on earth. You can only be perfect in Houston. In Houston? What the fuck? You can only be perfect in heaven. Houston. Where'd that come from? You can only be perfect in heaven. Sorry, it's the cashews. They're going in my head. These are like psychedelics for me. You can only be perfect in heaven. So what's the point of continuing this here? Like, as a Christian, we're not going to take responsibility for the earth. We're just going to try to be good people and believe in God and be faithful to his commandments or whatever and go to heaven when we die. So honestly, I don't see how you justify. I guess the counter argument could be, well, that'd be like us deciding when is the end of the world. Like only God decides that. So we just got to keep on suffering, keep on procreating until eventually God comes back and then the world's ended. So that way they can experience that. Glorification of celibacy. Certain early Christian writers, such as St. Augustine, occasionally flirted with the idea of ending procreation altogether to hasten the end of the world. What does that have to do with Amazon? The child-free Christ, anti-natalism in early Christianity. Damn, that's crazy. Don't like literally all priests technically fall into this? It's so weird. Christianity is so dumb, dude. Like, they believe Jesus was born a real, full, honest-to-God human with no physical human father. Where did he get his human DNA from? It couldn't be from God the Father, because God the Father is not a human. It's like way beyond anything a human is. But at the same time, Jesus is God. He's not the Father, but he is God. But the Father is sort of like a distinct thing. So he couldn't have got it from the Father. And why is he called the Father if he didn't father Jesus? And why are priests called fathers if they're not fathers? They're literally never going to be a father, actually. You know what being a father is like? It's a lot of responsibility for raising a child from the very beginning. Priests don't do that. They just get a bunch of sad people, sad, fearful people, and they just brainwash them. Voluntary singleness, redemptive suffering. Proponents of traditional theology argue that life is an inherent good, that suffering has redemptive qualities, and that the potential for eternal salvation vastly outweighs the risks of worldly pain. Interesting. Where was I?
In our culture, encourages this kind of thinking. So I figured, well, this is just one of the things that's wrong with me, and I'll just kind of ignore it, and that'll be fine. But you know, I've been making YouTube videos for about 15 years. So probably in, I don't know, 2008, 2009 or so, you know, I was making videos of a completely different kind. I was a toy reviewer. I don't know if you know what Dragon Ball is, but I was obsessed with the toys around Dragon Ball. So I was making Dragon.
It's like, lady, are you even serious? I'm obsessed with Dragon Ball?
Toy reviews and dressing up as the characters and screaming into the camera, and I had a great time. And then I started discovering, you know, videos by people like.
Lady, there's real suffering in the world. You get to spend your life making Dragon Ball toy review videos, and that's what you think is worth your time. Making Dragon Ball toy review videos, dressing up like Dragon Ball Z characters. For no point other than just to, like, perpetuate consumerism. One of the many causes of suffering in our reality. And then to be like, life is such suffering, we should just end it. Everyone should stop having kids. Lady, if there were no kids, there wouldn't be no fucking Dragon Ball Z. Okay? There would be no Dragon Ball Z if there were no kids. No one's making that for adults. Well, nowadays adults watch it, but you get my point. There wouldn't be cartoons, all right? There certainly, well, see, I was going to say there certainly wouldn't be Dragon Ball Z toys, but probably a large percentage of the people who buy them are probably adults. They have their figures, they pose them on their displays. I get it. I understand. I was a kid. Do you think it's a man, Sandro? I don't think it's a man. I don't think so.
Like in Mendham and Derived Energy and Metamorph, who were talking about anti-natalism, as well as animal rights and topics like the right to die, and particularly anti-natalism. It was like being hit by lightning. You know, it was just sort of the culmination of everything that I'd been thinking and wanting to find in the world, you know, since I was such a little kid. And so as an artist, and just as a person, again, it was like being struck by lightning. It just inspired me to such an incredibly huge degree that I've basically never stopped, and I've been producing various forms of art and activism around the subject for almost 14 years now.
Wow.
And I take it you don't have children?
No, no.
You've been in love before?
Yes, certainly. Yeah.
I mean, when you fall in love with somebody and it progresses.
Well, you want to have sex, right? You don't. So I don't think that we really have a. I think that the impetus to procreate is really culturally built. What we want is to have sex. We don't have an instinct to have children. We have a cultural sort of mandate and a lot of pressure put on us. You know, it's something that.
So you're saying somehow artificially we should protect from. And
we have those
conception.
Tools. We have those. I mean, a lot of those tools are being taken away from us. You know, if I get raped tomorrow, I in this state I should be fine. But in a lot of places in America, I don't have the right to have an abortion.
Right.
But certainly, you know, human beings have known how to sever that tie between sex and procreation for a long, long time. So
you're gonna have a hard time getting everybody to get on board with this.
Absolutely, there's no question about it. There's no question about it at all. What I believe is that it's the right thing to advocate for. And I think that there is going to be...
For what purpose, though? For the planet or for... Just to end suffering.
To end suffering. I think that living things are in harm's way. And we as living things, we desperately need life to be good, right? Like we
I mean, that's a valid point. It's a valid point, but it's like, if you're serious about it, you got to realize you're never going to get that result. And also, there's no self-honesty within this person in terms of what they're saying. They're not like, why do I feel this way? Like, what's the actual cause of all the suffering? Why are these thoughts here? They just like go with it, whatever their mind concludes.
We create people because we have all these notions that they're going to have happy lives, that they're going to do all of these things, and
I don't have any of those notions. We had children because we saw it as a responsibility to bring forth the next generation and teach them how to take responsibility for the world. That doesn't mean I think they're going to have happy lives. We try to make it happy, because why wouldn't you? But we're not under an illusion that they're just going to have happy lives. And, I don't put my happiness at the expense of my purpose, which is to create a world that's best for all. So a lot of the ideas that she has are true to some degree. Many people have children under that illusion. So she's not wrong in that, but she's not like, oh, I could change my starting point for having a child. That's what she's missing there.
Those are often quite false notions about the reality of those lives that we create. And I think that, look, there's all these competing, there will be a future of humanity, right? And there's all these competing...
Also, like, I'm glad that I'm alive, even though sometimes there's suffering. But if you can realize and learn how to direct yourself instead of letting your mind direct your reality, then you're not a victim to suffering. Which is not to say that somebody in conditions where things are happening to them, like they're in a war, that they suddenly can like mind control themselves to not care about it. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm speaking for myself. Like, I can take responsibility for myself, and I can look at, okay, I have a purpose. I want to create a world that's best for all. I have to get other people to see that. And therefore we have to realize that we're all actually creating this reality, and especially the system that we live in. And it's primarily due to the inequality between people's education. That's really fundamentally all that's going on. There's a lot of very, let's say, wealthy, powerful people who get away with a lot of things that are actually abusive to a lot of people, which is not to say they're the only ones abusing. That's not what I'm saying. But a lot of the other abuse comes from a lack of that person being supported to see that they don't need to do those things. But also you would need a money system, an economic system that would support that. So you have a lot of people. And so I'm not blaming wealthy people, because they're also like, well, this is the system and I don't want to be poor, so I'll be wealthy. But to do that, they have to take advantage of the gap in vocabulary of most people in the world, where they're never ever going to be able to do the same thing. It's a rigged game. But then even the people who are poor, they still participate in their mind. They still participate in feelings and self-interest and so forth. So it's not like a one-sided problem. It's just that the solution, the fundamental solution, or at least initial solution, is equal education and an equal money system, so that the value of money is based on the value of life, not just profit, not just I can have money to have a good life for myself, and that's the point of it. And also, I mean, look at the money system right now. What's the value of money? Right? You read Delta V and they literally say it in there, because the guy says, where does it get its value from? And the guy's like, I don't know. And then the economist explains to him, it's just debt. It's literally just debt. That's it. And what's the value of that? Is that you can put someone into debt, and now they're in debt to you, and now they owe you something, even though you didn't have to create anything. You just got access to money. Like Elon Musk, and people say, oh, but he creates the rockets and all this stuff. It's like, no, he just goes and gets money and then applies the money. And then people do stuff because they need money. That's all that's happening. It's not an actual he's creating anything. yes, he's setting the goals and he's pushing the people and so forth, but he's using money to do that. And if everybody had equal access to money, people could do more. But then you wouldn't be able to push someone to do something you want them to do that they wouldn't otherwise do because they lack money and they want money. So anyways, none of this is being considered here.
Philosophies and ideas about what that future will look like. Like the long-termists want to go on forever and create as many people as possible, and let's get off the planet and spread our misery anywhere we possibly can. There's the transhumanists who think that we're gonna genetically and alter human beings so that we experience gradients of bliss that have hitherto unknown, and we're gonna become robots, and it's gonna be just fantastic. And
yeah, which is also retarded.
And I don't see much hope in any of that. I don't see much real, movement towards that. I don't think those things are going to happen. But I also think those things, unfortunately, even though they look really great on paper, and people get very excited about them, and they seem like hope and joy and positivity, I think they have the potential to cause a tremendous amount of harm.
I agree.
A tremendous amount of suffering. And so I think, in my opinion, if we could just go quietly into that good night, we'll be out of harm's way. And I think that's what really matters. I think we've had a real good run. I think we've done lots of interesting things. It is going to go away.
Have we? Have we done a lot of interesting things? Have we made a lot of Pokemon toy review videos?
Anyway, unfortunately, I mean, the extinction of all life on the planet is just about an assured thing. Also,
it's presumptuous. It's presumptuous to say, like, I just see this thing over here on the side. It says David Benatar. Is it immoral to have children? Like, imagine someone saying it's immoral to have children, but like, I would rather exist than not exist. Even if they're suffering, I would rather figure out how to solve the problem than not exist. Because, again, and this was kind of what I was trying to say earlier, I think I just didn't complete the thought completely, which is, if you truly believed that suffering needs to end, you would just kill yourself, right? Because why prolong it for yourself if you truly believed that? It's like, well, no, but I really like watching Pokemon videos. Like, come on. Like, you're not being sincere about it. I'm not suggesting that people do that. I'm just saying, like, if you're consistent with the logic, you say, well, no, but if I did that, I wouldn't be able to go spread the word to everybody else. Like, why do you care? What does it matter? When you die, it won't matter anymore. So you're creating like this moral judgment because you actually value life. You actually value, there's like some point where you think life is worth living. It's just, you just don't see how it can be worth living. And so you say, well, it's better just to end it all. But then why don't you end it all? Well, because I got to save everybody. So you think there's value in prolonging your life to do something good. But that something good is just everybody should stop. Well, but you're not doing it. You're not living the words you're saying. You're just in your mind having like a purpose that's not a real, consistent, coherent purpose.
But what that will look like in a natural context, if nature takes us out, that's going to be pretty awful. I mean, it's assuredly going to be pretty awful. And
do you think there's lots of suffering that's imminent if we don't do something like this?
Yes, I do. Yeah. I mean, for all the reasons you just mentioned,
yeah,
I think
there's signs that it's coming.
Well, I think the destruction of the planet is real. We've done a lot of harm, right? And we're these living, sensitive, sentient creatures living on top of all of that. And yeah, it's not gonna, it's not gonna carry us through to glory days forever. I mean, we're kind of on borrowed time, I think. So why don't we just get out of Dodge while the getting's good,
There was another interview. Maybe it was the nihilist. I thought it was an anti-natalist. There was another one for sure. And the guy was talking about these he was talking about these, problems in the ecological system. Man, I don't see it though. That's weird. Let me go to the web, his actual let's just see if I can find it. There's her. Huh. I don't think it was the nihilist interview though, because I remember listening to that one. It wasn't this stuff. There was definitely an anti-natalist interview I watched, where the guy was like super articulate, explaining all the details of it, and he was talking about like the ecological crises that were quite interesting. But I don't see it. Maybe he doesn't have it up anymore. I mean, I definitely didn't hallucinate it. It's so weird.
The decision to have children is becoming more and more fraught. For some, it's not just a matter of whether they want them, but whether it's fair to bring children into a world dealing with wars, the housing crisis, the cost of living, and most likely an environment ravaged by the climate crisis. Philosopher David Benatar's view is that even before all that, to come into existence is to be born into a life of suffering, and that it is immoral to have children because they'll inevitably experience pain and suffering. It's referred to as anti-natalism, and David joins me now. Professor, welcome to you.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you, albeit remotely.
There are other anti-natalist thinkers who make a sort of similar axiological argument, but there is a spectrum here. I think that's important to say up front. You are a compassionate anti-natalist as opposed to a misanthropic anti-natalist.
Wait a second. Sandra, you said you looked it up and she's transgender? Dude, how did you know? Do you have some kind of like radar for this thing? I couldn't tell. I honestly could not tell. So that tells you already right there, there's a lot of like mental confusion.
What is the difference here?
Well, actually, I've advanced both kinds of arguments. The fundamental one for me, though, is a philanthropic argument. It's a concern for the being who's brought into existence. And my view is that whomever you create is going to have significant suffering in their life, and they're going to die. And they could have been spared all of that without any cost to themselves if they had never been conceived, never been brought into existence.
It's such a self-defeating argument because there's no... If you believe they didn't exist before, and this is the problem, it's the assumption that you don't exist before you're born. But let's assume that for a moment. If you don't exist before you're born, there's no they that you're preventing anything for. There's only the person who exists when they exist. And so why spend a lot of time trying to convince people to not give birth to people in the future that don't even exist yet, when you could put all that focus into what is it that's causing the pain and suffering now? It's just not, it's like not really doing any actual investigation of how does our system work and what is the actual problems with it? What is the actual issue? Man, if people would just study destiny.
And so I think we do always harm somebody by creating them. So that's my dominant argument. A misanthropic argument is really concerned with the harm that a human you create will do to others. And those others can be other human beings, they can be other animals, it might be mediated through environmental damage. And so it's important.
Okay, if you take that argument, that would imply you existing is a problem. You're participating in a money system. That money system is causing harm. You're the problem. So if you really want to accept that argument, you're the problem, and yet you're still existing. So it just shows that the first argument is bullshit. You do value being alive. Otherwise, you would just kill yourself. If you truly believed what you're saying, you would just end your life. You can't make some moral arguments. Well, I have to protect people that don't exist. That doesn't make any sense.
Important to note that the philanthropic and the misanthropic arguments are not mutually exclusive. They're not incompatible. Somebody could be motivated by both. They could be concerned both about this individual who's being created and also about the impact that this person will have on others.
The root of this immorality, though, at the very core of the argument is that having children, there's this asymmetry between pleasure and pain. What do you mean by this argument?
Well, pleasure and pain, they're really just placeholders for broader concepts of benefit and harm. And so I think it is the case that there is an asymmetry. I think that the absence of bad things is good, even if there's nobody who's going to experience that good. Say, for example, there were a child you could create, and that child would have a life of suffering, and you avoid creating that child. The absence of that suffering is a good thing.
Nobody would have to suffer unnecessarily if we had an equal money system and an effective education system, so that people understood their responsibility towards themselves, towards others, towards reality as a whole. Like, I could just end this whole discussion just by saying that. It's just the acceptance that that's not possible. But it's also not possible if you're going to accept that. It's not possible you're going to convince everybody to stop having kids. It's retarded. It's, if you're going to say, well, we can't create a world where everybody is educated effectively, they're taught not to harm, they're taught what harm actually means, they're taught to love your neighbor as yourself. You can't do that. And we can't just give everybody the resources they need, and you have to learn how to contribute to others and receive from others. That's not possible. Oh, so you're going to convince everybody to not have kids. Yeah, that's going to work. Like, it's self-defeating because you're still alive. The only way you could prove your point is just to, like, end your life. Because you would say, like, really, there's no value in this whatsoever. But you still think there's value. That's why you're there. Even if you think the value is helping other people realize this, you're still admitting to some value in being in existence despite all the suffering. And then you've made the point of the suffering your whole purpose, but not in a way of actually solving the problem. It's just a cop-out. And then you get a bunch of people like that other woman who was just like jumping on the bandwagon because it spoke to her because she was obsessed with vampires and werewolves and shit and Frankenstein. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about that. It's just actually kind of retarded. Okay, so that's that. I'm not gonna go on anymore. You can do some more research if you want. It's not really a self-coherent philosophy from my perspective. What else? What else could we talk about? I'm not gonna read any more of that book. Oh, I'll tell you a funny little quick story. So I'm reading that book, the Eclipse trilogy. It's called A Song Called Youth by John Shirley. And so I'm reading it last night. And then there's this part. So like he hasn't really described it completely yet, but like what we call the internet, they call it the grid. But there's this one part where he says the grid is what the web became. So it's like in the future. So it's like more advanced or complex than just like the web now. So he hasn't really fully fleshed out what that is, but he calls it the grid. And he says the grid is what the web became. And I'm like, okay, hold on a second. This book was written in 1985. There's no way he knew the word web. And like I talked about on the podcast a couple weeks ago, he used the word iPad. And what was the other one he said? iPad. There was something else too. And I'm like, how is this guy in 1985 using these words? So I asked the AI, I just do a Google search, and it's like, oh, yeah, he sometimes in these books, they'll use words, and then I'm like, but iPad? That's so weird. And they're like, yeah, maybe it subconsciously influenced the people who created it, but there was the iPod, and then the iPhone, and the iPad, and there was things called pads, and I'm like, all right, that's still such a weird thing that he came up with that word before it ever became a thing, like in the 80s. But then last night, I was reading a part, and he was talking about, because like part of the plot is that Russia is like trying to take over Europe, and it's like sort of a battle between Russia and then the Second Alliance, which is like this sort of Nazi Christian conservative group, right? And then he's talking about, it's kind of like they're talking about the history of things in that future world, and he says post-Putin capitalist Russia. And I was like, Putin? I was like thinking about that for a second. I was like, Putin? I was like, there's no way that this guy could have known who Putin was. So I was like, and I got on my phone. I'm like, let me see, like, when did Putin become prime minister? It was like 1999 or something. And I'm like, was he in the government before then, like in the 80s? And as far as I could tell, like, no. Maybe he was like in the KGB or something, but he wasn't like any kind of figure anybody would have known about or talked about or seen as significant that was probably going to be the future leader of Russia that I could see. So I was like, something is off. There's no way this guy, I mean, that would be so crazy. In 1985 to talk about post-Putin Russia. I'm like, what? So then I went to the AI again on Google and I was like, did John Shirley rewrite any of these books when he republished them in 2012? Because the copyright on the book I have is 2012. And I was like, well, that's just because they put them all three together or something. And it was like, oh yeah, he went back and edited it and rewrote it and like changed some things so that it didn't have like so much anachronism, or not anachronism, but like, maybe that's the right word. You know, it's like if you read William Gibson, he'll be like, they're on their cyber decks. And you're like, there's no cyber decks in the future. Like now, like we know that's like, it's like an old idea. Or it's like if imagine you're reading a sci-fi story and it's set in the year 2137 and, you know, they don't even have like video conferencing or something, you know, you're like, because it was written in like the 60s and they couldn't have imagined that or something, you know, like they just didn't see that as, you know, and I've read books like that where it's far in the future, but they're still sending like basically telegraphs or something, you know, and you're like, come on. So anyways, apparently he went back and like edited the book and to bring it up to like a more cultural, to change some of the wording and things like that to make it more culturally relevant. So I don't actually know how much he changed. But it was interesting. I just thought that was a funny story because I was like, dude, okay, no, hold on. Something's going on here. There's no way this guy... Because you have that sometimes in like books like William Gibson. I think he coined the term cyberspace, which we actually use. We don't really use it that much anymore, but for a while that was used. And there's other examples. But I was like, there's no way this guy is like some kind of that much of a prophet to like be able to know like Putin was going to be the leader of Russia. So yeah, it looks like he just edited it a bunch. But so I was like at first kind of disappointed. I was like, man, I want to read the original. Yeah, I know, I gotta find the first edition and compare it. But it's still like, it doesn't detract from anything knowing that. I'm like, it's still a really good book. So yeah, maybe one day I'll get the original, but who gives a shit? Like I got so many other things I want to read. Sandra was saying I should read Influx by Daniel Suarez. I have it, but I haven't read it yet. And then we were talking on the phone earlier and talking about the Culture series by Ian Banks, and I haven't finished all of those. I've read like, I think 4 of them, either 3 or 4. And as we're talking, I was looking at my bookshelf and I could see Matter by Ian Banks on the shelf. And I'm like, oh, I should read that. And I'm like, wait, no, got to finish what I'm doing now first. Because it's like, there's some books where you don't mind putting it down and switching to something else for a bit and coming back. But this Eclipse trilogy, A Song Called Youth, is it's really good. It's kind of like a Daniel Suarez, like where you like want to keep reading it. But yeah, what else? I guess that's it for tonight, guys. I don't really have a lot more. I'm also working on something. I got a really good stream coming up at some point in the near future, but I haven't finished working. I didn't spend any time on it today. I spent a lot of time trying to get the nuts that hold my mower blades off of my 0-turn mower, trying to get those unstuck. I got one of them, and there's 2 of them that are just like crazy stuck on there, so I'm probably just gonna keep at it. So I was gonna do some mowing, but yeah, that didn't work out. And when I lifted up the mower, I took like a chain on my tractor and I just, you know, with the front end loader, and I just lifted up the mower because it's pretty heavy. And I don't have any ramps or anything. I guess I could, but anyways, I just lift it up. It's easy. And like, there's 3 blades. It's a 60-inch deck, and so there's 3 blades. One of them looks pretty okay. The one on the right side, it's like, you know, it's supposed to, I mean, like the blade's supposed to look like this, you know, flat. Like one side's like this. It's like bent down, which would explain why I was like tearing up the ground last time I used it. But I must have hit something right at the end when I was using it last time, because then I noticed it was like gouging the ground. But the middle blade, it's like, imagine it's supposed to be like this long, or like, okay, here's a knife. Like imagine the blade's supposed to be like this. Like this much on this side and this much on this side was missing. So like the whole thing was actually only like, it was like this. It was just like missing entire sections on the end. I was like, dude, what the hell did I hit? So, yeah. So I have to change the blades. I can't really not change them. I also have a mower on my tractor, but if you've never driven a zero-turn mower, they're pretty awesome. Like, you can stop, you can like rotate 360, like they're pretty cool. But with the tractor, and I don't know if all tractors are like this, but I have a Kubota, and so it has this like long shaft. Well, it's like that's part of the mower actually. So like the mower is like this big gigantic flat thing with like with two blades on the inside that spin. It's like a big disc with blades attached, and then it spins this disc, and like the blades just like spin around. I think that's how it works. And then you attach it to the back of the tractor, and on the back of the tractor there's this little shaft that spins, and you hook the long shaft into that one, and then it's called the PTO, which I don't know what that stands for, but let me see. What does PTO stand for?
What's different about
Shush. What does PTO tractor stand for? Power takeoff. I didn't know that. I would have never guessed that. Power takeoff. Wow, I've only ever heard it called a PTO. But it's basically like this little thing that spins, and it's attached to the motor. And then if you have something else that can attach to it, it can spin that, and then it can translate that into some kind of work, whatever the thing it's attached to is. So for my tractor anyways, to spin that thing, I have to up the RPMs. So with my tractor, I can there's like this shift. It's not a shift, but it's like it looks like a shifter, and you can leave it all the way down, and it just spins the engine at like a normal speed depending on what gear you're in. But you can also increase the RPMs artificially, so it makes the engine spin faster. And then, so depending on what you're using for your PTO, when you turn it on, because it's usually off, but you can turn it on and it starts spinning that shaft back there. But it's connected to the engine of the tractor. So if you increase the RPMs, it'll make that thing spin faster. But when you do that, when you increase the RPMs, you're no longer using like the throttle, I guess, like the gas pedal basically on the tractor. There's a gas pedal. But when you increase the RPMs using that shifter, you don't really use it just kind of goes basically. And so it's not like using a throttle anymore. It's like you're in go. And then I have like another shifter called a shuttle shift, which is really nice. And you can put it in neutral, and then you can put it into forward, neutral, reverse. It's really nice. So I can have the engine running, even if I push throttle. It's kind of like having a neutral. So it has like this shifter. And it's really cool too, because you don't have to use a clutch. You can just like be driving, and then you can just shift it back into neutral without having any kind of a clutch. Although it also does have a clutch, but the clutch is so you can change gears. So there's quite a lot of parts to this thing. But anyways, when you shift up the RPMs, it's like the throttle or the gas pedal doesn't really do anything anymore. So when you're using the mower, you're basically going one speed. And you can change the gear for like different gears, but it's like it's a little I don't know what it is. It's just like it's not as easy to control. Like when you have a throttle that you're pushing with your foot, like you can control the speed, like using the throttle. But when you have it engaged with the RPM lever, it's like you're kind of just going one speed. So you basically have that speed or neutral, and then your brake. But you can't just like speed up, slow down, speed up very easily. My point being, you definitely don't have as much control as you do like with a zero turn, where you have like these bars and you can move them forward and backward, and like you do like this to turn it, right? And you have like a lot of like very precise control over the mower. But with the tractor, it's like it's much bigger, heavier, and like, obviously with time you get better at driving it, but there's just certain parts of the yard where it's small enough that it's not practical to use the mower there, although I probably technically could. So all that to say, I've got to change the blades on that mower, and I'm having difficulty with it. So, that is my suffering. And do I therefore conclude that it is immoral to bring children into this world because I have to suffer through getting nuts off of a mower? The answer is no, because I'm going to figure it out. Sandra said I just need to apply more heat to the nut. That's what she said. And with that, I will leave you for the weekend. No stream Sunday as normal. But I will see you guys on Monday night at the normal time. And I'm probably going to go hang out with the kids now. See what they're up to. And I'll see you guys again Monday night. All right. Have a good one. And talk to you later. Bye.